use this to create a better life for yourself and a better view of yourself, for changing your life for the better, no matter what age you are, no matter what circumstance you're in. So there are new fields of study, there are new technologies, there are new employment opportunities that didn't even exist a few years ago. It's a given that we're going to have robots and that they're going to serve some functions that normally humans would serve.
That's the first sign that you're good for it and qualified for it.
So we're calling Danubius University the diamond on the Danube. Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Hei, stai un pic! Dacă apreciezi conținutul podcastului nostru, abonează-te pentru alte episoade interesante.
Salutări și bine ați venit la un nou episod din Podcastul de VINERI. Eu sunt Ion, el este Vlad, iar alături de noi îl avem pe Profesorul William B. Harvey, proaspăt rector al Universității Danubius. Rectorul e un fel de CEO al unei universități. Domnul profesor are un CV impresionant, plin de titulaturi, pe care nu o să le menționez pentru că efectiv asta ar fi tot podcastul. După cum ați bănuit, profesorul William este american, așa că acest interviu va avea loc în limba engleză. Hello and welcome, Professor Harvey, or should I say Bill? Thank you for...
You should say Bill, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me to join you.
Thank you for giving us an hour of your precious time. So, I know you've been to Galați before. Mm-hmm. How was that experience?
It was really quite a welcoming experience for me. I've traveled extensively throughout the world, probably 40 or 50 countries. And so each place is a new experience. You're never quite sure what to expect when you walk in. I didn't really have a sense of what the atmosphere was going to be. It was an international conference on globalization in higher education. And those things can be pretty dull sometimes, kind of stuffy, not so interesting. But there was a wonderful welcoming spirit in the city, at the university. Got a chance to meet a lot of people. They were all very friendly. And so it was really just a very wonderful and warm experience for me and it stayed with me for quite some time.
So how did you come about to participate in the competition to become the CEO of Danubius?
It was partly an extension of the visit that I made there, the one that I just referred to. I've been, as you probably know from looking at some things in my background, I've been involved in a number of institutions in the U.S. And part of the benefit of my experience over the years has been my involvement in very different kinds of institutions. I've been in very large universities, I've been in very small colleges. Some were focused on research, some were focused on teaching. So I have a certain, what we call eclecticism, variety of experiences. And of course, my international visits are always ones that I like to go to universities and get a sense of what they're all about. As I mentioned before, my previous visit to the university and to Galați was a very affirming one for me. And as a result of that, I stayed in touch with the folks who are the senior administrators, Andy Puska particularly. A very good friend of mine, and a very good friend of Andy's as well, is also the vice president of the board of trustees. So when it was clear that Professor Puska was going to relinquish the rector's position, they reached out to me, asked me if I would be interested in joining the administrative staff as rector. And I was a little nervous about it, to be quite honest with you. A bit of a change, but the more they talked to me about it, and again, reflecting back on my own memories, the more I was convinced that this was really a wonderful opportunity and experience. And let me just give you a little bit more context on that. We're all coming out of the impact of the virus, the pandemic across the world, all right? And so you have a chance to step back and reflect on what you can do as a person and what any organization that you can do to contribute to the greater good, so to speak, all right? One of the things that I think is going to come out of this, hopefully, out of the pandemic, is a greater sense on international communication, international engagement, international cooperation, all right? And Danubius University is exactly in the place that it should be, philosophically and geographically, to serve as a bridge between Eastern Europe, the larger European context and world, Asia, and the US. And so my experiences in the U.S. at a variety of institutions are ones that I hope to bring to bear to help the institution be that bridge between the two continents, if you will. We want the university to be the go-to place for students and scholars from around the world.
So you want to make the university global?
Absolutely.
Well, we hope it becomes one.
But about that, yeah, we all know that the education system has been smacked behind the head by the pandemic and has shown like a lot of weaknesses. We had to resort almost overnight to remote learning as we're communicating right now. And it has shown not to be very effective. But, well, not because of the remote part, but because we had to merge the old grading system, the old way of accumulating vast quantities of information by the students, I mean. And
we're going to have to rethink the way we provide educational services. And obviously to young people and not so young people who are able to come to the campus for that experience, we obviously want to encourage them to do that. There's something very affirming about being in a group of other people who are interested in learning and growing. But the online connection is a reality for us, and it's going to be one for the foreseeable future. So we also want to make sure that we provide the best possible opportunity for people to learn and grow using that platform as well. And of course, the third thing is what's called the hybrid connection, the opportunity to use online when that's of benefit to you in terms of your own personal circumstances, but also to supplement that online activity with some engagement with other learners as well.
Yeah, that's where my question was going for. Yeah, thank you for anticipating that. Yeah, but is there a way to integrate technology into the actual way of doing education, or will it be the same as right now, just Zoom calls and things along those lines?
I mean, that's the challenge, isn't it? I mean, that's our obligation is to find the best way to do it. And part of what I've been encouraged by in my conversations with my colleagues at Danubius is this sense of curiosity and this sense of spirit to try and find the right way. There are just a tremendous number of opportunities that are going to present themselves technologically. Your platform is a learning platform. You share information with your listeners, okay?
Yeah.
And so we don't need to think about learning and increasing your sense of awareness only in a classroom setting, okay? There are a variety of ways to learn. We need to find ways in which we can make those ways interesting and accessible and have people understand that by engaging in a program such as this, there are things they take away from the program that help them kind of rethink what they're going to do themselves and how they can better their lives.
Well, I know the education system, when it was designed, it was made precisely to provide society with a labor force, with a somewhat qualified labor force. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, I include all spheres of jobs, from janitors to mailmen to doctors to philosophers. Well, soon technology will render those jobs obsolete. For example, truckers. Yeah, Elon Musk is working right now on autonomous vehicles, autonomous trucks, and there's a lot of truckers in the world. So they'll be out of job, and I think they'll have to return to some universities or some sort of education institution. Mm-hmm. So, usually people argue that, like in the days of the industrial revolutions, the jobs that were lost were somewhat recovered by the jobs that were created. But I don't know if this will be the case again in our technology industrial revolution sort of stuff. Yeah.
And I don't think anybody can tell you with certainty exactly where we're going. I certainly can't. I wish I did know all the answers. I don't. But I do know this. The only constant is change. Okay? Change is always going to be with us. The question is, how are we going to approach that change and do it in a way that we can benefit from rather than have a detrimental outcome? There's a story I'm in the U.S., of course. So there's a story in the news today about the tremendous impact that our current president is putting on climate change, all right? So this is a reality that we all face, no matter where we are, all right? So what he's talking about is green energy investment, all right? And so that means that people who used to be engaged in fossil fuels, oil and gas and so forth, he's saying, let's find a way to transition those workers into green energy jobs, all right? So that they're still employed, obviously, but they're doing something that is beneficial to their fellow citizens in their community and around the world. And that's the approach we want to bring to the institution. Not accepting the way things are, but thinking about how they could be, and then trying to find steps that we can take so that the circumstances that we're all facing in the future are better than the ones that we're facing right now.
So is there anything that you're thinking right now of implementing in the Danubius University, thinking forward about this possible future where countless people lose their jobs, and there's I see an opportunity for universities to adapt to a sort of professional reconversion of people who might lose those jobs?
I just want to say a couple things. Number one, you made a reference before to universities preparing professionals and so forth, and that's historically what they have done. But if you look at some of the things I've written over the years, I've been very critical of institutions, because my sense is that they have served the function of creating opportunities for people who already have opportunities, right?
Correct.
They've essentially served the folks who are already in elite status positions. And so we have to be broader than that. We have to look at ways in which we can be more inclusive. We have to look at ways we can bring in people who haven't then had a favorite spot in society. That's number one, okay? Number two, universities shouldn't be about jobs alone. Of course, we want to make sure that people are appropriately prepared to take care of themselves and be employed and so forth. But this whole aspect of human growth and development, how you use this to create a better life for yourself and a better view of yourself and a better perspective on your world, that's part of what the university has to do too, okay? So we can't get so completely involved in this whole idea about job creation that we lose the sense of expanding the human experience.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, that's essentially how we move forward. Yeah. Well, shouldn't it be the goal of humanity to just relax and enjoy the free time while robots and AI and other stuff like that work for them, right?
You know, there's so many movies that say that leads to a bad end, right?
Yeah.
But by the same token, it's a reality, okay? I'm visiting my grandkids today. And so they have a little R2-D2 robot that they play with, okay?
Oh,
and so that takes me way back, 30 years or so to when that was introduced. But it also helps me reflect on how the whole area of robotics has changed during that period. So now it's a given that we're going to have robots and that they're going to serve some functions that normally humans would serve, okay? That also means some people are going to be displaced in terms of their profession. But it also, again, getting back to this point about expanding our kind of conceptual domain, it raises the questions for us about what are the good things that can come out of that. If we're not doing the things that robots are now doing, if we don't have to do them for ourselves, how can we use that time constructively, not just for our own individual selves, but for the betterment of the society that we live in? So yeah, I think that in some ways, the free time, the opportunity to reflect and so forth, potentially that will be available to us in ways that wasn't available before, because robots are doing kind of mundane things that we used to do ourselves. But it's the way we use that time, the way we challenge ourselves to use the time and our creative ability to look forward and think about ways in which we can improve not only our own lives, but the lives of others in the society.
Are you a big Star Wars fan? You mentioned R2-D2. So I would imagine.
And actually, I'm kind of a small time Star Wars fan compared to younger people in my household. I have two children who are adult children now. They're both working, and I have two grandchildren. And so their knowledge of Star Wars has far past everything that I thought I knew about. They know every little detail from every film, and I don't even try to keep up with them anymore. But I think the piece of it for me, particularly when the movie came out, was that, again, it challenged us to rethink what the possibilities are. And I want us to keep doing that. And I think that's what the university's function is in any society that exists.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. Fair enough. So I have a few friends that work in education. Like I have from high school, she's a friend that she's now a kindergarten teacher. And a few that are becoming right now college professors, and almost all of them, when I discuss with them, they tell me they seek tenure. So for people who don't know what tenure is a permanent position, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So that person will have the guaranteed that job for life unless they screw up or something. Well, there are a few problems that derive from that. So our current president, for example, he was a high school professor of physics, if I'm not mistaken. Well, up until he entered politics. He focused all his attention on the political career, but because he had tenure, that position is reserved for him, and the person that now he is substituting for him, he can't get that tenure position because that position is blocked. Well, I guess what I'm trying to ask you, does tenure hinder the ability for a professor to seek improvement? Or, I mean, basically, I'm asking if a professor can get lazy because of tenure. And are you in such a position, or have you ever felt that way, that, well, now I have a job for life, life's good?
Yeah, I've held tenured positions in 4 different universities in the U.S., okay? And while I've been privileged to be in that kind of situation where job security is guaranteed, I've also had mixed feelings about it, to be very honest with you. I was a participant in a program maybe 3 or 4 years ago at one of the most prestigious universities in the U.S., Northwestern University in Chicago. And I was a panelist at a program that they had in the business school. And so the questions that were posed to us on the panel, were what's the interface? What's the connection between business and academia? How can they get along together? How can they support one another? And so my response to that was to call attention to the significance of tenure in the university. And it was very clear that the folks in the corporate world didn't even know what that was, okay? So I explained it to them in very short terms, and they said, what? You mean you can have a job for life? Never get fired? And they went, how is this possible? And it was very funny because that was a very realistic response to a situation that exists in a very small community. And it does point out to us that in some ways, the way in which we operate our world, the academic world, is different from what many academicians call, quote, the real world, all right? My sense is that everybody ought to be ready and prepared to be evaluated on a regular basis. If you have a job responsibility, then you have an expectation that you will perform to the expectations that are presented when you accept the job, all right? If you don't do that, then there should be some opportunity for the employer, whether it's the university or corporation or some other entity, to be able to take steps to challenge your continuation in that position. Now that is a contrary position to many of my colleagues in the academy. And the reason that they support tenure in many cases is that academicians sometimes feel that in pushing for truth and trying to get a better understanding, they sometimes can take positions that are contrary to more established individuals in the community, in the academic community, in the political community, okay? And if they do that in trying to help their students get a better understanding of what could be, not just what is, but what could be, that they're at risk for losing their jobs for doing what they're supposed to do, which is to continue to push for truth and understanding. So there's a conceptual basis behind the idea of tenure. That's what I'm trying to say. The conflict is between when the theory and the practice don't exactly fit together. And I think we're looking at that right now across the world in academic institutions. We're trying to figure out, again, particularly as we see this rise in online instruction and the way that has changed the way that we deliver the information to our students. How is it that we can best serve the people that we're here for, the students and the communities that we're part of, and still be able to make statements and take positions that might not be supported by the status quo? So that's the dynamic. I don't know that we have an answer for it yet. In the States, what has happened is that a number of institutions are no longer hiring people on tenure line positions. They're hiring people in less protected kind of positions. And we're still looking to see the outcome of that. Is that going to affect the quality of instruction in the classroom? We don't know the answer to that yet. So we're studying that, but it's just as clear to me, as I said before, that there's nothing that's constant with change. just as the world is changing around us, the academic community has to be prepared to make changes as well if that's necessary. We can't simply say that because we've always done it this way, we expect to always continue to be.
Oh, okay. So tenure is a way to. Sorry, Vlad.
We have to examine the way tenure operates and serves not only the people who hold tenure, who are the professors, but the people who are receiving the services from those tenured professors, who are the students and the communities that we're part of.
Okay. So you're
there has to be a middle ground.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for an effective middle ground that serves the best interest of all parties.
You're advocating for competence, even in tenure, and also tenure is a way to protect researchers, for example.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And there are a number of institutions now that have put into place what they call post-tenure review, which means that even after you've achieved tenure on some regular basis, say 5 years or so, every 5 years or so, some of your colleagues come in to look at your performance, and they make a judgment about whether or not your performance is appropriate and meets the standards that they would expect. And if not, there are certain kind of changes that you have to go through in terms of the way you do your instruction, the way you conduct your research, and so forth. So that's an interesting modification, because that did not exist when I first came into the profession. Once you earned tenure, you were essentially, as you were saying, protected for life. There used to be a saying that the only way you could lose tenure is to have some inappropriate connection or relationship with the president's spouse. That was a saying we used to use when I first came into the academy. So there have been some changes, but certainly as the world around us continues to change, we also have to be aware that there are changes that we may need to make in the academic sphere as well.
Interesting. Well, now I want to take us into a sensitive subject. We know that the US has some of the highest tuition fees, and most students go into crippling debt after they finish college. Well, without any guarantee of actually paying that debt with a well-paying job. There are
or even succeeding in their respective fields of work.
Exactly. Well, there are studies that show that people that finished college in the 50s and 60s had to work less time to pay off their student debt, in contrast with students nowadays that they have to, when they finish college, they have like a huge debt. Well, fortunately, that's only in the US, and here in Europe and Romania, we have both public universities and private, but the tuitions are not that high. Well, will you adopt the same philosophy as rector of Danubius? Like, will you increase tuition fees? I mean, there are arguments for higher tuition fees.
The tuition situation in the States has really accelerated over the past 3 decades or so. I could tell you the figures that I was paying when I was an undergraduate, and it would make you laugh compared to what some of the fees are now, okay? And the increase in student indebtedness is really a huge national problem for us. It's one that probably is going to be addressed by the new administration, because one of the things that they're talking about is essentially eliminating student debt for many individuals who now borrowed money in order to go to college and can't repay it because of the economy. But there are larger issues that are involved, at least from my perspective. I spent 5 years out of the academy in what is the premier national higher education association in the United States. It's called the American Council on Education. And so that's kind of an overarching organization that protects the operations of about 3,000 or 4,000 colleges and universities across the country. So obviously student tuition was a big issue for us, because it ties into the set of governmental relations and policies that exist that impact students' ability to go to college. So as college costs were rising, of course, we were continuously looking to try to find ways that the student aid levels, student support from the government and other sources was also rising, right? So now we're at a tipping point, I think, and that's why you see the administration stepping in to maybe cancel student debt. But the part of that conversation that was important for me, and I think it plays out not only in the US but around the world, is an understanding of why it's important for any national economy to invest in higher education in the first place, all right? a concept that we used to talk about when I was at the American Council on Education. It's called simply the greater good. Investments from individuals and governments and whatever sources in education ultimately improve the entire standard of living for whatever region or country that you're talking about. So we have an obligation not just to ourselves, but to the country and to the future of any country that we're part of, to try to find ways to invest in as many citizens gaining access to higher education as possible. That's particularly important in a knowledge economy. The more educated people you have, the more likely you are going to have economic improvement, not just for those individuals, but for all the other citizens of the society as well. So we have to find a way to balance that tension. No government has as much money as it wants to do all of the things that it wants. But we have to try and find a way to make the conversation one in which there's an understanding among government officials, among students, among common citizens, that investment in higher education is not just an investment in that person, it's an investment in the future of the entire country. So we want to keep tuition costs at Danubius as low as we can, because we want as many people as possible who have an opportunity to come and study so they can improve their lives, so they can improve the lives of others in their communities. Now, we're also, as a private institution, obviously in a situation where we have a balance sheet that we have to be careful about. Okay? We have to be able to pay the bills every month. So you have this ongoing conversation, this ongoing approach to finding ways in which you can find revenue. Most of that for us is going to come from tuition. But we also want to do some outreach to some of the corporations, the major corporations in the region, to help them understand how helping us ultimately is going to help them as well. Because our graduates will come back to them to work in their companies, work in their corporations. Go ahead.
There's also European programs from the European Union that aid, colleges and universities to offer more scholarships and to help more and more people from disadvantaged situations. So that could help too.
Absolutely.
And it could become a somewhat a huge trend in the following financial exercise to bring as many students as possible using European money and those from donor corporations that can then employ the young adults and the young professionals.
And not just young. And I want to make this, and I think this is what online instruction has shown us in some respect. Because if you're a person who is middle-aged, 40, 50, whatever, and for whatever reason you think you want to make a change in your life and you have to acquire a new set of skills, then you're a college student or potential college student also, all right? And we have to be as open to those folks as we are to the 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds, okay?
Yes, I agree.
University ought to be seen as an opportunity for personal transformation, for changing your life for the better. No matter what age you are, no matter what circumstance you're in, this ought to be a place that you see that you can go to expand your skills, to change your perspective, to do the things that you feel you're capable of doing in order to make life better for yourself.
Well, yeah. I have a great example of that. My mom wanted to go to college, but at 19 she had me, so she couldn't. But as I went to high school, she just enlisted into college. Mm-hmm. She finished college and then she did a master's degree. Well, yeah. I haven't, so she's an engineer now. She's working. She's happy about it. Yeah, and she was thrilled at the possibility that she could actually finish college at 40-something years.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Right. And that gets me back to one of the points I was trying to make earlier about the transition in the economy and the job market and so forth. So I'm talking to a young person here in the States a couple of months ago, and I'm the person has just gone into college, I think in the second or third year. I said, "What's your major?" And so she says, "Bioinformatics." Whoa. And I said, "What?" What is that? All right. So there are new fields of study, there are new technologies, there are new employment opportunities that didn't even exist a few years ago. Okay. So this is the point. This is where we are, trying to find ways in which we can look down the road, get some sense of what's likely to be available for folks, Give them the skills and talents that they need in order to enter into those fields, even though they know at some point that they're going to have to come back for future engagements, because even the fields that they're in are changing. So these are the opportunities that are presented to us. And again, we have to be very thoughtful and inclusive in having the conversations about how we make sure the structures best fit the needs of the people we want to serve.
Will there be exchange programs in Danubius?
Absolutely, yeah. We have a particular concern. I look at it personally as a problem in American higher education, okay? And I'll be very honest with you, and I don't think this is a secret. Very too few of our students have any sense of what the world is like outside our borders, okay?
Yes.
This is a tremendously narcissistic country. You know, we're much too inclined to look inward and think that what we do is the only thing that counts in the world, all right? So we really need to initiate as many activities and programs and engagements as we can to get our students outside the U.S., to get them in other parts of the world so that they can see and connect and relate to other cultures, other people, other ways of seeing things, other ways of understanding. And they will come back better informed about how to negotiate in the society that they live in. They'll be better prepared as they move into their careers to be able to move around the world and take advantages of opportunities that might be available to them they might have never considered had they not done an international study opportunity. So this is one of the things that's very high on our list, to help American students understand that here's an opportunity to visit a part of the world that you may know very little about, expand your own perspective and horizon, and come back a more educated, literally more educated person than you were before you took that experience.
And of course, spreading the knowledge of what you have learned in other cultures also expands the horizons of people around you. And
absolutely,
it's a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed with that. So Galați is as you know, is a student center with two major universities. Mm-hmm. There's the Danubius and the Tuneret de Jos. I don't know how to translate that in English.
Lower Danube.
Lower Danube or something like that. Well, unfortunately, most young students seek larger university centers like the capital, Bucharest, Iași, or Cluj, mm-hmm. or other countries in Europe or even abroad in the US.
Right.
And very, very few remain here to study. Most students that come to Galați are from the Republic of Moldova. Just stick throw away from us. But what are your plans for attracting new students or more students?
Or maintaining the local ones here?
Yeah.
Our challenge from an international perspective is helping people understand how much that particular region of the world, and our university in particular, has to offer to them in terms of an educational experience and a cultural experience. So that's the challenge that we're taking up now. How do we identify ourselves in such a way as to be distinctive and also, as we're considering, a go-to destination for students and scholars who might want an international experience. So we're playing with some wording, some messaging that will, present the institution and the region in a better light. I'll try this phrase out on you because we're playing with this as one of the ways we want to identify ourselves. So we're calling Danubius University the diamond on the Danube. Okay? And again, what we're doing there is highlighting a beautiful scenic region of the world, okay, that too many people, especially from the US, are just absolutely not familiar with. And so we want to kind of raise that sense of interest and attraction. And of course, if you go to Google or whatever and look at what the region has to offer, you'll see that there's a tremendous set of interesting historical and cultural opportunities that we want people to know about and take advantage of. One of the major considerations for us and for anybody who travels is cost. And this is one of the most cost-effective areas that you can possibly visit as well. I was speaking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago, talking about the opportunity for students to study in Danubius. He happens to be a professional now who operates and has operated for the last 15 years out of Rome, okay? So we were comparing what the cost would be for a student, American student, for example, to study in Rome as opposed to studying in Galați. And there's a huge difference there. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is one of the other things we want to point out. Okay, we want you to have an experience that is beneficial for you from an academic standpoint. We want it to be cost effective for you. We're just talking about the situation with the expense of gaining a degree. All right, it's a safe, welcoming environment. So there are a huge number of things that we have to find ways to educate the American population about, students, their parents, the general American community, so that we can have people understand that this is the kind of a place that you're going to want to spend some time in, and we want to help you.
Well, diamonds are pressurized carbon, right? Basically. So is that a metaphor for students, that we put a lot of pressure on them and they just become diamonds?
It is, you know, and again, that's really what the higher education experience is supposed to be all about. Okay, I got into this business a long time ago because I was a precocious, bratty little kid, all right, who wanted to be in a setting where I could do what I wanted to do, as opposed to, this gets back to the tenure thing, as opposed to people telling me what I had to do. But I came into it thinking I knew everything, and here's the real beauty of the academic experience, and realizing I knew almost nothing, all right? So this is the transformation process, and I knew that if it worked for me, it, you know, probably was a situation that a number of other folks really saw as the significance of an academic engagement. It's not just about getting more information pushed into your head. It's about understanding what your capabilities are and how you use those capabilities.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we're on the same.
It's refreshing to see a big academic person like yourself thinking in such open and I don't know, very
commonsensical way. I think it's so simple.
And common sense, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Ion have both been in higher education here in Romania, and what you're saying is reflected in maybe the work of one or two professors, but the rest are all old, outdated, I don't know, machines that expect you to reproduce something, and then they call you the winner.
You know, and it's funny that you should make that out. Let me come back first of all to the significance of where we are at this moment, okay? Because we're at a transformational time in regard to the way we exit this terrible circumstances that we're all experiencing internationally. And that presents us both the challenge and the opportunity to rethink what we've done and to reconceptualize the way we go about our business, okay? There's a politician in the U.S., guy who used to be the mayor of Chicago, and he was talking not about the pandemic, but just about things in general. And I really appreciate the irony of the statement that he used, because he said we should, as individuals who are in a creative society, never let a good crisis go to waste. Okay.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah.
Okay. So we're coming out of this crisis, and the question is, how are we going to come out of it? All right. For me, because of the life work that I've done, these are institutions that I know are capable of creating new opportunities and changing perspectives. Although they're such comfortable places, and I think this is what you're making reference to, Vlad, that sometimes when folks get into those institutions, the last thing they want to see is change. Things are pretty good for them, the folks are in it, okay? And that's human nature, okay, I can go with that, okay? But again, I think we have some larger obligations and responsibilities, okay? And this is an opportunity for us to think about how we exercise those responsibilities, not just for our own individual benefit, but again, for the benefit of the communities.
Well, that's a mindset that you have to educate from a small age up to, I don't know, 80 or 90, because I think this type of mindset you learn constantly every day. It never ends.
Yeah, it's a constant battle, as Vlad said. Yeah, and we have to do that daily. I mean, I struggle with it. I think everybody struggles with the temptation of letting in our comfort zone and not getting out of it. Yeah.
And you have a certain set of responsibilities to your audience, to your listeners, and so forth. And this is why for many folks in the academy who want to be critical, I guess, of other organizations, corporate world, religious world, whatever. My response to them is, it's too easy to point fingers, okay? Let's look at ourselves first.
Yeah.
Let's figure out what we're not doing as well as we can. We're the only entity, the only social entity that accepts the obligation to try and give people a better sense of understanding about who they are and where they fit to the world. That's what we take on, okay? Now, if you take that seriously, what it means is that you can't simply continue to perpetuate what has always been because that's comfortable for you. There are too many people that we look around and see every day who are not in comfortable circumstances. So what can we do in a larger contextual sense to make sure that the knowledge that we have, that the understanding that we're supposed to bring to the conversation is going to benefit not just our own comfortable lives, but the lives of the people who are a part of the society. This is, in some ways, the American dilemma, okay? Because America has always articulated this wonderful set of values and ideas and so forth that we've never lived up to, okay? So if we understand that accepting that reality then challenges us to rethink not what we're doing, if not every day, at least periodically, to say, can we do this better? Can we make it more inclusive? Can we create a set of circumstances that benefits a larger number of people? Religious organizations don't have that responsibility. Their responsibility is to the people who are part of their faith. Corporations don't have that responsibility. Their responsibility is to their shareholders, okay?
Right.
Political institutions don't even really have that responsibility. A politician's responsibility is to get reelected, all right? So we're the only social entity that has that responsibility to pursue the greater good. And we have to ask ourselves how well we're accomplishing our mission.
Some would say journalism should be doing that too.
Yeah, with the fourth estate, I like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I've read in some article that you did some work for NASA. What's all that about?
Yeah, it was really interesting. This is when I was working in Washington, D.C., and I had interface and connection with a variety of government agencies. I had some friends who happened to work at NASA, and at this point in time, they were kind of, interestingly enough, as an organization, reconceptualizing how, as an agency, they could best meet the needs of the American public, all right? So they created what they call a chief education officer within the organization. And that person's job was to help everyone, every American citizen, understand what NASA was all about, aeronautics and space, because the greatest understanding the public has, generally speaking, the larger amount of support that you have, and the easier it is for you to get the job done that you have to do, both in terms of interaction with the public, and this is important, and increasingly in order to get funding for your work as well, all right? So there was a real practical side to it as well. So the chief education officer decided that what she would do would be to construct a national education advisory committee. She would pick, I think there were about 20 or so people from universities around the country in different fields, not just in areas that were technical fields, but in the humanities, okay, in the health professions, okay, because the potential that exists in terms of aeronautics and particularly space travel is extraordinarily wide, again, when you talk about the conceptual dimensions. So she put together this really impressive blue ribbon committee of people, and to my surprise, quite honestly, then came to me. I was working again at the American Council on Education at that time, asked me if I would chair the council, the Education Advisory Council for NASA. And I said, I don't think I'm really qualified to do that.
That's the first sign that you're good for it and qualified for it.
That's pretty much what she said to me. She came back to me with that exactly. And I said, well, okay, I'll give it a try. And so I convened this very august body of academicians from around the country and say, well, what do you do? And, what kind of work are you involved in? And I said, look, let's kind of be a little less formal than this, okay? Let's kind of talk about what the possibilities are in terms of how we can help the organization.
Just be human, right?
Exactly. So one of the things that came out of this was there's a tremendous database now that's available to every teacher in the U.S. online, and has been for a number of years, about the significance of aeronautics and space travel that they can bring into their classrooms. All right. And so
Sweet.
what you're doing now, literally, is you're preparing the next generation to understand the significance of not only what space travel is all about, but what the agency's role is in supporting that mission. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of the impact that educational organizations, in conjunction with other partners, can have in helping the entire population understand how we move forward. So I'll tell you the one thing that didn't work for me, and I still think it's a great idea, okay? So what does every kid want to do, you know, as they're kind of growing up and beginning to understand about, you know, what the world is about? They want to fly, okay? Either airplanes, space travel, whatever. And I'm saying, you know, let's even take it a little bit further than that. Let's figure out how we're going to get kids and their parents from the very first minute that they're alive understand how important NASA is. So I said, this is what I want to do. I want us to go to a company that makes beanies, little caps for babies. You've been to a nursery in a hospital, and they have these little caps on, you know, to keep the baby safe. And I said, I want those caps in pink and blue, and I want to have a NASA emblem on every cap. So as soon as a baby is born, they're a future astronaut. And they said, well, how much would that cost? I said, well, look, you know, I'm an idea person. I don't have to come up with a number.
I'm sure NASA's budget could cover it.
That's exactly what they said. They said, that's a great idea. That is not in our budget. We're not going to do it. But what I was trying to get them to understand, I know that they understood the significance of what I was suggesting is, which is that if you have something that is useful and beneficial to the society at large, then the best thing you can do is communicate that message out as far as you can and down as far as you can. Because the more support you generate for your mission, as NASA likes to say, the more likely you are to have people who stand up for you and make the case for you when you have either a financial issue or just an information issue that you need for people to understand how you're going about your business and how it ultimately might impact their lives.
I know Neil deGrasse Tyson does the same thing. Like, he tries to inspire people, young people to, and he always reminds us that when there was in the Cold War, people had an incentive to actually aspire to reaching the moon. Mm-hmm. So nowadays, we have to rely on people like Bezos and Musk to take us there. But hopefully the government, all of the world's governments will chip in to that dream of flying into space.
And since we're on that specific topic, again, what I think is the example there is how the support of the mission has shifted from national organizations, in this case NASA, to individual entrepreneurs, okay? I don't know whether that's good or bad, but I know what it does show, again, is that there are now people who are doing things in ways that make themselves quite well off from a financial standpoint, but they're also contributing to, again, what the general dream of the larger society is, okay? So those kind of opportunities are going to come up in a variety of fields down the road. And that's why it's so important for me, for our students and for all students, not just to look at what is, but to think about what could be.
And challenge every step of the way.
Yeah, I remember my dad was young, was very little when the man reached the moon, and he was struck by that. I mean, he still remembers like the reading from the newspaper, even if it was communist propaganda thing, that the Soviets actually beat the Americans to it and stuff like that. But he was dreaming about it. It made an impact on him. Yeah.
There are some kind of conceptual things. Let's talk about this pandemic for a minute as the negative side of something that affects the entire human race. Okay. So what it does is create ways for us to challenge ourselves to think about ways in which we can, if not eliminate, reduce the potency of pandemics as they occur in the future. All right. It challenges us again to think about how we use our resources, our human resources, as well as our financial resources, to address challenges that affect all of us, no matter where we live. Okay, no matter what our financial status may be, the disease doesn't care. Right?
Obviously.
So this is what I want Danubius and all universities to be. Places where people come in and think about not just what is, but what could be.
Yeah, that's a noble goal, and I'm all for it. Yeah. Side note, I had the COVID.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was like 3 days of hell, fever, coughing, all that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Fortunately, I was very lucky. I got through it. Everything was okay.
He lived.
Yeah, I lived. Yeah.
So let me just tell you again to illustrate how things are in some ways kind of upside down. It was last week, I think. Today's Thursday, so maybe Monday of this week. The death toll in the U.S. from COVID passed 400,000. Okay.
Yeah.
In the most theoretically advanced technological and economic society in the world. All right. We're having extreme difficulty with our vaccine distribution process. Okay. I'm trying to get on a list so that I can identify some point in time in which I can even get the vaccine. All right. Now, I say these things, and they aren't going to be popular with some of my friends here in the States, but it's an honest reflection of where things are. Because what it does is cause us to step back, again, in terms of the American perspective on life and our interaction with other people. To understand that by sharing knowledge, by sharing information, by having a perspective that is not so focused and so insular about what happens in our country between these two oceans, ultimately the contributions that we make in that exchange are going to not only benefit us, they're going to benefit people across the world. So this is, again, what we have to be thinking about as we come out of this pandemic. This is where I started with. And understanding that we've all been taught a lesson here, okay? That greater interaction and communication and cooperation is for the benefit of everyone, okay? It's not a specific situation where it's a zero-sum game, as some folks say, from an economic standpoint. Universities ought to be about the business of trying to help folks understand that knowledge transcends borders, okay? That communication is a universal good, right? That cooperation leads to benefits for all. And so again, if we can help the university be positioned in such a way that it becomes that bridge between Europe and the US and the rest of the world, then we'll be exactly where I'd like to see us.
Yeah, well, we both have no idea when we'll get vaccinated, but one thing's for sure, we're gonna get that vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this year, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and after that, hopefully you'll come to Galați. We'll have a glass of nice wine. Or
absolutely.
A barbecue, likely. Barbecue beer.
And talk a lot more about dreams of people getting educated, actually.
I feel very good about the fact that, since obviously I'm not able to travel right now, the president obviously is doing a wonderful job. I don't know if you know Andy Puska personally, who is the president of the university.
We have met him. We've met
him. Andy's such a knowledgeable person, not only obviously about the university, but about the country and about the connections that are necessary in order to continue to move things forward. So, we're working together. We're a very effective team, I think. And, like it or not, this actually is an era of Zoom administration around the world. Okay.
It is.
So we talk every day. We make sure that there are targets that we set to help move the institution forward, in a variety of respects. And, I feel good about the progress that we're making in the limited time that I've been involved. I feel very good about the response that I've gotten from the faculty and the staff. We talk frequently about how we want to make the university a place that people aspire to be a part of. My goal, and you guys can help me do this, is within the next few months, over certainly this next calendar year, my goal is to make Danubius University of Galați the hottest, coolest international university in Europe. This is the place where people want to be.
When you put it like that, I mean, sounds...
I'm all in.
Yeah, yeah, sounds attractive, yeah. Even though...
We're going to be celebrating our 29th anniversary this year, 29 years, okay?
Yeah.
And so I think I'm going to give you a little bit of a heads up, but in some ways it'll put pressure on folks who are working on this to make sure that we meet our timelines. So one of the things we're going to do is that there'll be an announcement that will be sent out probably in a couple of weeks. So in recognition of the 29th anniversary of the university, every month for the rest of the year, on the 29th day of the month, we're going to have an international sweepstakes drawing. Okay? So you enter on our website, and if you are the lucky person, you'll get a grab bag. Sweatshirts, mugs, pins, zip drives, all of these things with the Danubius trademark, as well as some of the local goodies and crafts from the Galați area. And we're going to have this sweepstakes that we're going to distribute internationally, because if you're not yet a friend of Danubius, we want you to become a friend of the university. So this is a way for us to get the message out there about who we are as an institution, about what we have to offer, and just, again, another way of saying to the world that we want you to think about connecting with us in whichever way suits your needs, on campus, online, whatever, we want you to join us.
That's a wonderful idea. I'm going to enlist now. I'll have to. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Oh. And if there's a merch store, if there isn't, there should be one. So people can actually buy their own, I don't know.
Working on that too. Absolutely. I have, there's a young woman who's working with me, and I was communicating to her about the way that the face of the university, which happens to be mine in some cases, and Andy Puska's another case, we've got to find a way to get student faces to the university, okay? Because, this age thing, whether you like it or not, it catches up to you, all right? And so I want folks to see the young, vibrant faces of our students. And she said to me, that's wonderful. That's exactly what I want. She said, because at Danubius, and I love it, she said, we are young, proud, and beautiful. Okay?
Yeah, so that's true, because I'm a student. I'm a student of Danubius, and I'm young, proud, and beautiful.
Well, I'm as old as the university itself, so yeah.
Well, that's going to be another one of our trademarks.
I've always been jealous of, in the movies, you see the people with Columbia or Harvard
Michigan.
sweatshirts.
Right.
Yeah, I can't wait to wear a sweatshirt of.
We're going to get that store up and running.
Okay.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So since we're in the finish lines, I wanted to thank you, Professor Harvey or Bob.
Bill.
Thank you so much for your time, and we can't wait to talk to you again. Hopefully face to face.
And to meet you in person.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And again, as I started out saying, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak to your audience. I hope I've conveyed a sense of what the institution is all about, where we're going. And I look forward to having a conversation and a good dinner and a good glass of wine with both of you at the earliest opportunity. Yeah,
we'll take you to good places. Yeah.
We know some good places in the area.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.